Welcome to Gray Overload, and Nvidia has talked at Computex a lot about AI, a little bit about gaming, but there's been a lot of talk about Nvidia here, and really I want to focus on gaming or AI because that's really kind of seems what Nvidia is doing right now. But there's been talk from Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxed, and Jaystwocents, and I highly recommend you watch some of their videos here about kind of a little bit behind the scenes of what they've seen with Nvidia and what's been going on there, of how they pressure reviewers and etc. We're going to touch a little bit on that here, but their videos are much better deep dives as they are, getting pressured or have been in touch directly with Nvidia. Highly recommend you go about and do that. Then there's also Cortex did a video. Highly recommend you watch his a little bit on that. And then also Tech Yes City kind of did some videos here. Did a video on saying Nvidia needs to kind of split the company. I'll come back to that too. That's an interesting point, right? Because it seems like Nvidia's focus right now is only on AI. Gaming's just there to come along for the ride. And gaming actually got Nvidia to where it's at today. Without gaming, Nvidia wouldn't be the company it is, right? Billions of dollars have been made on the backs of creating GPUs for gamers, and those gamers buying the GPUs. And the late Gordon Mong of PC World had a great quote with Gamers Nexus a year ago, a couple years ago, is that no matter what it was going on at the time, right, you were complaining about Nvidia, but you were still buying Nvidia. And for the most part, that kind of fed into where Nvidia is at today. I'm not saying that you should go buy an inferior product, but taking the perspective where Nvidia got to, they are the dominant player. They're able to call kind of what they want and all their own shots. And then what are you going to do when Nvidia or AMD doesn't have that competing high-end card? You still want that high-end device, you're still going to Nvidia and you're still spending the money there, causing this huge problem I think that we have today of the competition just isn't holding up their end of the bargain, and Nvidia gets to call their own shots. And since their brand recognition is so strong, it has been hard for anybody else to compete in. And I think that's slightly changing here with the 9070 from AMD and what they're capable to do with that series here. If AMD can kind of fill out that range with the 9060 XT and do that right, launch it with a good price performance, keep their driver solid, there's an opening here. But even with the driver side of things, you've seen Nvidia kind of go backwards a little bit, and that is a overall problem. And before we go into the drivers a little bit more and talk about that, the whole side of the reviews of the 5060, I want to touch on that. It looks like it's, about 22% faster than the 4060, which, it's a jump up. I still don't see this as a full 60 class card. They if they want a 60 class card, they really needed it to be at like 12 gigs RAM or something, a little bit faster. I see this more as a 50 class card of where we're at, kind of, if I'm looking at the whole generation here. But we'll see where this goes to. If you're looking for a card in this 8 gig range, it's there. Hardware Unboxed did their review, or I'd say mini review of this while they're at Computex, and saying, you know what, it's slower, but it seems like once you get to that 8 frame buffer, if you're in 1440p, it then starts dropping some textures, which, you're spending 300 some dollars on this card, if right. And if that's the case, it really needs to not do that, right? I'd expect at that price point to get a pretty good gaming experience, because you're spending that price point and you really want something in that price range, start looking in the used market. I think there's better value there, and from what I've seen recently, and that's going to at least deliver you something where, yes, you may not get the multi-frame gen and stuff like this, but I think you'll get the experience with, if you're going to game at 1440p, you can at least have something worthwhile and have all the textures rather than them dropping out. And this, they didn't have a day one review, but they were able to get it done. They did, it's a mini review. I respect that. I respect that of them to be able to get that out. I wish that I could do more reviews, but, I can see where they point out things where users may complain or viewers may complain, well, you're just complaining because you didn't get the card. I can see that side of it, but at the other side, of somebody that, likes hardware, likes to deal with hardware, and likes to get as much information as possible, I think it really hurts the end user. Because if somebody were to come to me and say, the 5060 comes out, I'm looking for a new card, what should I get? Here's my price range. I, I can't make a fair assessment and give that person the best advice based upon the information that's out there, right? I don't have the money to buy every card and test them all, and Nvidia banks on that, right? So, based upon some of the stuff that Gamers Nexus has said, Hardware Unboxed has said, Jaystwocents has said, it seems like that Nvidia wants to control the content, right? It's not, I don't know if Nvidia is paying for reviews, but it's almost like that they are having the blackmail of the reviews of saying, hey, this is, what we want you to say, this is what we want you to review, or you're not going to get access to our cars, or you don't get access, in Gamers Nexus case, to these engineers, which I find really fascinating, right? That's my background's engineering, so I find that extremely fascinating, and I'm sure that, them trying to strong arm you, you have to then go back to where you're sticking on your morals and stuff like that. Or, I can even see these small YouTube creators, right? I do this as a side hobby, and so there's some of that where it's a hobby for me. I like to talk about tech, and so it's not like if somebody were to come up to me, and I've had smaller companies do this, and we need you to say this, I'm just like, well, that's not how it's going to work. So I'm not just going to be bought or paid to say something, right? So there is that side of it, but there's areas of, this is your entry into the market where you finally get a GPU, you finally get a test, and you finally get that out there, and maybe to help your channel grow, because that's what that's where you are in your growth pattern. It could help, and that's the downside to these small creators, because it kind of leaves a blemish on them a little bit with what Nvidia forced them to do, and then also the side of it where it's trying to put a blemish on the whole industry as a whole, because Nvidia really wants their first party stuff. Now, you get into some of their drivers issues with crashing and everything else that has happened, and it really, to me, this is just a bad move by Nvidia, because as I see it, right, I'm an engineer, I'm a developer, and I'd rather see getting some stuff out. And maybe this is how Intel and AMD are taking it right now. And other companies, I really hope that they like the feedback, because let's say a reviewer has a bug or an issue. While that may be in the review, that at least gives them a heads up so that they can fix that before the user is able to get into that same scenario. And I think that's a positive side for users, and for well, I think, the reviewers get the downside of them having to be kind of like the extra layer of test. But again, if I could develop something that could test 100% of the execution paths that was going to happen of every hardware out there, every possible build, all that stuff, it'd be awesome. But so far that has not been the case. Maybe with AI we might get there, but man, there's always a bug someplace. And this is just helpful for end users, I feel. I think, I know it is, because if that bug already has an advantage of a reproducible sequence of exactly, I mean, this is how we kind of got the whole rise in performance issues ironed out, was because of stuff like this, of feedback reviews and that working back and forth with AMD and trying to figure out what exactly was the difference, admin accounts and stuff like this. We actually got the differences, and we're able to see those fixes into Windows, pretty soon after that. So this is one thing that I like to see more of, and I think Nvidia is taking a path of more being controlling, which is going to be a bad path. And this is where their AI is something that they're more focused on than games, right? Their drivers downside. We've heard rumors of that they haven't been focusing on drivers as much, and if they're not focusing on his drivers as much, that could be going to AI. AI is making more money, but I think the reason why they haven't thought about really splitting the company like Tech City has said is because the gaming side is the fallback. We've seen this kind of like with mining. Remember, mining took off and there's a whole bunch of cars being sold and everything else, but mining was more short-lived. Nvidia has seen with AI that it can be a longer-lived product, but they have to worry about is that it may drop off. There may be an MPU type compute, an ASIC, an FPGA that may be more efficient, a specific compute module that may be more efficient, and they're really worried about that. You see in some of the stuff that they've announced with having third parties be able to go through and have access to their stacks of software and stuff of how they communicate across, because they want those integrated parts into their stack, kind of like how AMD has talked about, like adding third-party modules and modules into their software and stuff like that. They all want this, but I think with Nvidia, where does the new stuff go first? It's always to them, and then it slowly rolls out to other users, which then, or other companies, and that really, other companies do not like that. So I think it's going to be a failure on their part with this, considering where they've gone to in the past and how they've acted in the past. Now, as this AI stuff has expanded and keeps growing, and I think it's going to have a leveling off point at some point. No matter how much the growth is, there's going to be a point where they've become saturated to a point, and as they're the dominant market share, other people will eventually catch on, do different things, and create a niche for themselves as well, and maybe probably even take market share, right? There's always opportunity here, Nvidia just got out to the jump and got there. How much of that is, the MFG and the DLSS comes into play here? And I think that one thing Nvidia is really pushing, as they did with this, 5060 review, is pushing those two items, while DLSS, they started out as being not a great technology, right? You kind of see where it's going, but it's not something that was that great. It's improved over and over again, and they want multi-frame gen as well, MFG, to keep on going and improving that. You can see where they're starting to put down as the gamers are going to get the cards that AI doesn't need. And what'll happen, I think, is that they want these technologies to take off, because maybe their DLSS 4 is slightly better than FSR 4, but they're pretty close. But they want these to take off, so their frame rates are still amazing on a lower class card that then they can sell and say, this is all the gamer needs. I think that's where they're kind of going to, is that this is it, this is all you need. All these technologies, AI technologies, these different softwares on top of this different pipeline stuff that we have, are enabled so that you can just buy the cheapest card that you need and buy these 60, 70 class cards that they're going to charge more and more. But you have all this technology and all this software that allows you to play as if it were a high-end card. And those high-end cards are going to be for those AI, places, the development and everything else, and this is how we're going to segment it. I kind of see them going that route, but I think that Nvidia is torn, right? One, gaming got them there, but AI is having them take off. And while I don't want to give up on gaming completely, they don't want to put effort into making gaming better. I think Vex, YouTube channel, had a video on this where I was listening to it. I'm pretty sure he did a good job, and he was saying, is gaming getting worse? We have better hardware today, we have stuff, but is gaming actually going backwards? And it kind of is, right? And Nvidia is part of that. And so, while they're working with TSMC, they only have X amount of silicon that they have ordered every single year, right? It's not like you can instantly having silicon there for all these chips that are being made. They're allocating based upon their growth paths, and they're just hoping that by the time AI levels off and they need to put more chips in the gaming, they haven't destroyed the relationship with gamers. And based upon the last couple years, you could have easily said that's probably their best bet for their market that they're in, right? They had such brand recognition that no one was leaving them, right? Everyone was still buying Nvidia cards and being happy about it. And they were just grumbling at, the price, this bug. And it's just like, well, you were dealing with it because that's what you had. Now, with AMD, the 9070, I think, was an opening. And or the 9070 XT, I think it's an opening for AMD here based upon Nvidia's stumbles, right? Nvidia right now is the biggest seller for convincing people to use Radeon cards. Now, it shouldn't be that way, but Nvidia is the one that is stumbling over everything. So if they've opened this up, right, AMD has a problem with TSMC too, with how much silicon can go where. Now AMD has a whole bunch of server chips they do. They're still trying to grow their market share there. Just a lot of growth that they have across the business with their working with TSMC and how much silicon they have to go around. But Intel could also get into this too. If Intel has a card, I think that they have if they can kind of hit in there, I think the B580 and the B570, while they'll be less powerful, I think, than the 5060, I think they'll be less. I think there's an opportunity for B at least close enough that, hey, this is a great alternative, especially for the price point that you have, and maybe that'll come to fruition. But on the AMD side here, that if they just start saying they're still selling the AI side as a combined UDNA, they put out a high-end GPU in the next generation or two, hopefully next generation. They keep coming with good price to performance, and just realize the gaming, we still need to service the gaming market, and we still want to be committed to the gaming market. We will still have the high-end AI side of things, but we won't try to diminish the gamer. We'll try to deliver to the gamer. And if they can do this, that is the option that they're going to be able to present to Nvidia, or in competing to Nvidia. I think a lot of gamers will respond, especially after the 9070 XT, where they seem to be a way more stable card. I like a 9070 XT to be able to test as well. That would be kind of fun. I have a 7900 XT, which I like to see how they compete against each other. But in doing that, I think AMD has set a pathway up to show, hey, we are not only just committed to making sure we're good in AI, we're actually committed to also making sure the gamer is going to have a good experience across the board. Their FSR4 makes sense, especially because they got these handhelds, they got these chips, in laptops, the AI 300s and stuff, that can do a lot of compute and then gaming as well. I think in certain scenarios that makes a lot of sense. And then you keep going up and be like, that FSR technology at a certain point for our high-end cards, is only just an add-on. Instead of, Nvidia always sells this DLSS and MSG stuff as a huge benefit, especially to the 5090. And those cards, while those cards can use it, it shouldn't be the selling point of the high-end cards. It should be the high-end cards are driving everything pretty much natively, right? They have this huge benefit overall being the native cards. So sorry about that, my phone rang, but I want to see something like that come up and be able to really compete against where Nvidia is at. And I think there's a huge opportunity here, and I don't think it's just you got to split the company. I think that you have to have the focus, and your groups have to be focused on both things, or separately, right? They can work together on certain things, but you have to have, the software stacks and stuff really be dedicated to this to be able to deliver. And if you're going to focus on where your silicon goes, you got to make sure that you have that allocated properly to be able to really service both those industries. And if you have to split them up by different groups and say there's this much and that much, and of course, they probably already do, and it probably switches depending upon where that demand is. So this is kind of what I wanted to say, go through, gamers or AI, kind of see where it's at and just think about it a little bit. We'll see where all kind of this market takes off. I really hope that, Nvidia and AMD and Intel all deliver for gamers. I'm not holding my breath though, based upon what Nvidia has done here. I think that this is an opening for AMD and Intel. We have to finish seeing how that is going to play out here in the next couple months, especially as stock kind of gets replenished, because AMD's just been, well, a lot of these cards in that range have been sold out and priced way over MSRP. But with Nvidia, we kind of see where this is going, and we've known that for years. You take a look at the videos from Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxed, Jaystwocents. We've known for years where this is going. GeForce Partner Program, right? EVGA getting out of the business of making graphics cards. So we've known this. It's just now that it's starting to really hit the end user because of what Nvidia has done year after year after year. Let me know what your thoughts are on where Nvidia is at in the gamers or AI, and I hope Nvidia can turn it around. Right, I can see them coming back and really trying to deliver for gamers in the next generation. But they did this before, right? The 3000 series was coming back and giving something a little bit back to gamers. All over, I have the 4000 and now the 5000. Just not do it. The 6000 may give a little bit back to gamers, but is that enough? With that, I want to thank you so much for watching, grow, and helping this channel grow. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, watch all my videos, as that really does help on the channel. Until next time, God bless.